The boardroom on the 52nd floor smelled like leather and ambition. 8 executives sat frozen around a table that could seat 20, their morning coffee growing cold as they watched a man in a charcoal suit place a briefcase at the head of the room. Victoria Hale's fingers hovered above her tablet, suspended in a moment that felt like free fall. The man was black, early 40s, with silver threading through his temples too early. His suit was decent but not expensive, the kind you bought when you needed to look professional on a tight budget. He opened the briefcase with movements that spoke of absolute calm, the quiet of someone who had already counted the cost and decided to pay it anyway. "Security, this is a private board meeting." Victoria's voice cut through the silence, sharp and certain. She had built an empire on certainty. $800 million in 6 years, all because she never hesitated, never doubted, never let emotion cloud judgment. The man looked at her directly. No aggression, no deference. Just eye contact that suggested he saw past the designer suit and the perfectly styled blonde hair to something she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. "Good morning, Miss Hale. My name is Marcus Thompson. 6 months ago, you terminated my employment for leaving at 5:30 in the afternoon to pick up my daughter from school." One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Victoria's hand finally moved, pressing flat against the tablet as if anchoring herself to something solid. "I'm here because I have evidence. 73 cases of systematic discrimination over 6 years. All parents. Most of them people of color. All of them fired using the exact same coded language you used on me." He pulled a stack of folders from the briefcase, each one flagged with colored tabs. Red, blue, green. A rainbow of destroyed lives organized by category. Victoria's throat tightened. She opened her mouth to speak, but Marcus was already continuing, his voice never rising, never falling, just maintaining that same terrible calm. "I thought you'd want to see the evidence before your board does. Before the press does. Before the Department of Justice does." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading across expensive suits and carefully maintained composures. Victoria's face remained perfectly controlled, but something flickered behind her ice-blue eyes. Something that might have been recognition. Or fear. And the screen went black. White text appeared. 6 months earlier. The alarm clock read 5:45 when Marcus opened his eyes in the Queen's apartment that cost $800 a month and was still barely affordable. The living room doubled as his bedroom, a pull-out couch that he folded away every morning before his daughter woke up. On the kitchen table, bills formed a neat stack that represented every choice he'd made in the 3 years since Linda died. Electric bill, $92. Due in 6 days. Internet, $47. He'd already downgraded to the slowest speed. Maya's asthma medication, $425. The prescription needed refilling in 8 days. His checking account showed $183.47. The math never worked. It hadn't worked in 3 years. He'd gotten good at making it work anyway, the way you got good at anything when the alternative was watching your child suffer. Marcus moved quietly through the apartment, starting coffee he couldn't really afford but needed to function. The walls were covered in crayon drawings, bright explosions of color that Maya created with the focused intensity only 8-year-olds possessed. Dinosaurs and rockets and stick figure families that always showed 2 people instead of 3. On the wall above the couch, a framed photograph held the weight of everything he'd lost. Marcus in a suit he'd sold 2 years ago. Linda, beautiful and alive, laughing at something just outside the frame. Baby Maya between them, gap-toothed and perfect. The engraving on the frame read, "Linda Thompson, 1985 to 2020. Lung cancer. Was stage 4, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. $340,000 in medical bills that swallowed their savings, their house, their future. He'd taken the first job that offered immediate health insurance and paid weekly in cash. Hale Industries had hired him as a night janitor without asking where he'd worked before. They saw a black man who needed work and assumed they knew his entire story. They were wrong. Marcus made oatmeal with cinnamon, the cheap breakfast that Maya had learned to call pancakes because it made both of them smile. He knocked gently on her door, watching as she stirred awake, braids scattered across her pillow like spilled ink. 5 more minutes, Daddy. You said that yesterday. Come on, baby girl. Breakfast is getting cold. She giggled, rubbing her eyes as she sat up. And the inhaler on her nightstand caught the morning light, a small plastic reminder of how fragile everything was. They ate together at the table, bills pushed to one corner, Maya's homework spread across the other. She talked about school, about her friend Emily, whose father had taken her to a Broadway show. Marcus felt the familiar ache of things he couldn't provide, but kept his voice light and full of promise. We'll do something special soon, I promise. Maya reached across to squeeze his hand, her small fingers warm and trusting. It's okay, Daddy. I like our time. She used her inhaler without being reminded. The morning dose that kept her lungs open and her life stable. Marcus packed her lunch, checked her homework, kissed her forehead. The ordinary rituals of single parenthood that he'd learned through grief and necessity. At 3:15 that afternoon, Marcus stood outside the conference room on the 52nd floor of Hale Industries, pushing a janitor's cart that held everything he'd become. Through the glass walls, he could see Victoria Hale conducting a meeting with 5 vice presidents, her voice carrying even through the expensive soundproofing. I don't care if it's his daughter's birthday. If Rodriguez can't commit to the Shanghai trip, find someone who will. Marcus glanced at his watch. 5:18. He needed to leave by 5:25 to reach Maya's aftercare before it closed at 5:45. Any later meant a $25 fee per 15-minute increment, money he absolutely didn't have. The intercom on Victoria's desk crackled to life. Miss Hale, the evening cleaning schedule, Mr. D. Thompson is requesting to leave early again. Victoria's expression shifted from focused to irritated in less than a second. Again? Send him in. Marcus entered the conference room, leaving his cart in the hallway. The 5 vice presidents watched with varying degrees of discomfort. One of them was Felix Okonkwo, the company's general counsel, also black, also wearing a suit that cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Felix wouldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Thompson, this is the 4th time this month you've asked to leave before your shift ends. Victoria didn't stand, didn't offer him a seat, just looked at him the way someone might look at a machine that kept malfunctioning. Yes, ma'am. My daughter's aftercare closes at 5:45. If I'm late, there's a $25 penalty for every 15 minutes. One of the vice presidents whispered something to his colleague. Marcus caught the words, "Just pay it," and felt heat rise in his chest. He pushed it down, kept his voice level. I understand the inconvenience, but my contract specifies 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. I complete all my assigned areas. My performance reviews have been... Your performance reviews measure the minimum. Victoria cut him off with the precision of someone who'd practiced dismissing people. Excellence requires more, Mr. Thompson. I built this company by outworking everyone. I expect my team, at all levels, to mirror that commitment. Other janitors cover overnight shifts, weekend work. You've declined every request for additional hours. With respect, ma'am, I'm a single parent. That's my daughter has severe asthma. I need to. Mr. Thompson, Victoria's voice dropped to something colder than dismissal, something final. Let me be clear. I appreciate your personal challenges, but Hale Industries needs people who are all in. You've made a choice. So have I. You're terminated. Effective immediately. The room crystallized into silence. Felix Okonkwo stared at his hands. The other vice presidents found sudden interest in their tablets. Marcus stood perfectly still for 60 seconds that stretched into something infinite. Then he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of 3 years surviving, 8 years of fatherhood, a lifetime of understanding exactly what he was worth. Miss Hale, I know exactly what I'm worth. I'm a good father. I'm reliable. And I can lose this job. I'll find another one. But I can't lose my daughter. I can't get back the years I miss. He paused, studying her face with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to read people in rooms far more powerful than this one. I feel sorry for you, because I don't think anyone has ever chosen you over their ambition, and that's the loneliest thing in the world. He walked out, left the cart in the hallway, took the elevator down 52 floors, with his dignity intact and his future demolished. Behind him, Victoria Hale sat frozen at her conference table, Marcus's words hanging in the air like smoke she couldn't clear. 4 days later, Marcus sat at his kitchen table at 11:30 at night, Maya asleep in the next room, calculator and bills spread before him like evidence of a crime he'd committed just by existing. The math was simple, brutal, impossible. Severance, $1,240 for 2 weeks. Rent due in 9 days, $800. Maya's medication refill in 6 days, $425. After rent, $440 were left. After medication, $15 remained for food, subway passes, everything else required to keep a child alive in New York City. His hand moved to close the calculator, but something caught his attention. The termination paperwork from HR, printed on expensive letterhead that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. In the top corner, a reference number, TRM-2024-073, 73. Marcus opened his laptop, fingers moving across keys with the muscle memory of someone who typed these exact searches 1,000 times before in a different life. The EEOC database still had his login credentials active, a bureaucratic oversight that no one had bothered to correct when he'd resigned 3 years ago. He searched, Hale Industries, terminations, last 6 years, keyword filter, family responsibilities. The results loaded slowly on his ancient laptop. 73 cases. 68% were parents, mostly mothers. 89% were people of color. Every single one fired within 6 months of a major family event. Birth, sick relative, caregiving obligations. And every single termination record used identical coded language. Sarah Chen, 2022. Refused optional evening networking events. Lack of commitment to company culture. James Rodriguez, 2021. Left at 5:30 daily to care for elderly mother. Not a team player. Or terminated 3 weeks after mother's stroke. Patricia Williams, 2020. Declined weekend training seminars, performance concerns. Marcus's hands stilled on the keyboard. The pattern was so clear, it might as well have been spotlit. This wasn't about him. It was never about him. It was a system, refined over years, designed to eliminate anyone who dared to prioritize family over the endless consumption of a corporation that measured worth in hours, logged rather than lives lived. His email pinged. The sender was r.delgado@hayland.com. Subject line, I saw what happened. Marcus opened it with hands that had started to shake. Mr. Thompson, my name is Rosa Delgado. I work in legal. I was in that meeting when Miss Hale terminated you. What she did was wrong. I've seen this pattern before. If you need anything, please call me. You're not alone. Below her name, a phone number. Marcus stared at the screen, at the 73 cases that represented 73 families destroyed, at the email from a stranger offering help he didn't know he could accept. Something shifted in his chest, the grief and exhaustion making space for something else, something that felt like purpose. The next morning, Marcus dropped Maya at school, kneeling down to fix her backpack strap and check that she had her inhaler. She ran toward the entrance, then stopped, turning back with the sudden intensity children had when they sensed something wrong. "Daddy, why were you crying last night?" The question hit harder than anything Victoria Hale had said in that conference room. "I wasn't crying, baby girl. I heard you. In the kitchen." Marcus pulled her close, after breathing in the smell of her shampoo, the simple reality of her. "Daddy's just figuring some things out, but I promise, we're going to be okay." "Did you lose your job?" He couldn't lie to her. He'd promised Linda, in those final terrible days, that he'd never lie to Maya about the important things. "Yeah, baby, I did. Because of me?" "No, never because of you. Because of people who don't understand what matters." Maya hugged him tight, then ran inside when the bell rang. Marcus watched her disappear into the building, then sat in his car for 5 minutes, letting himself feel everything he couldn't afford to feel when she was watching. Later that day, during math class, Maya raised her hand. "Yes, Maya?" "My daddy says family is more important than work. Is that true?" Another student, a white girl in expensive sneakers, laughed. "My mom says people who can't work hard stay poor." The teacher's face showed the trapped discomfort of someone who didn't want to touch that particular landmine. "Well, both things can be. Let's move on to multiplication tables." Maya sat quietly, her small hands folded on her desk, and understood for the first time that the world her father navigated was crueler than she'd known. That night, Marcus's phone rang as he tucked her into bed. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but he did. And everything that came after began with that single choice to pick up the phone and hear what Rosa Delgado had discovered in 6 years of keeping files no one else wanted to see. Marcus stood at his window, watching the city lights spread across Queens like scattered stars, and thought about 73 families who'd been broken by a system that valued profit over presence. He thought about Maya's question. He thought about Victoria Hale's empty eyes when he told her the loneliest truth she'd ever heard. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that it was about to get so much worse before it got better. The kind of worse that tests whether dignity can survive when everything else is stripped away. The kind that would force him to choose between protecting his daughter and fighting for justice. The kind that would reveal exactly who he'd been before grief and bankruptcy had forced him to push a mop for a woman who thought people were disposable. 4 weeks later, the convenience store on Malcolm X Boulevard had fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects. Marcus stood at the counter with exact change counted out in his palm, watching the cashier's eyes track from his worn jacket to the stack of coins to Maya standing beside him, clutching her inhaler. Milk, bread, peanut butter, the cheapest protein he could find. Maya's eyes drifted toward the candy display, lingering on a chocolate bar that cost $2 she knew better than to ask for. 67, 68. Marcus counted slowly, making sure each coin registered. The line behind him grew. The cashier, a white woman in her 50s with a nameplate reading Deb, sighed loud enough to make her opinion clear. "You gonna hold up the line all day?" Marcus didn't look up from counting. Just making sure I have enough. 69, 70. Maybe try getting a real job instead of counting pennies like some. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The implication hung in the air between them, thick and familiar. Maya's small hand found Marcus's, squeezing tight. Daddy, let's just go. He met Deb's eyes then, holding her gaze for 3 seconds that contained every response he wouldn't give in front of his daughter. Then he placed the exact change on the counter, took his groceries, and walked out. The August heat hit them like a wall. Maya stayed quiet for half a block, her hand still gripping his. Why was she mean to you? The question arrived without preamble, the way children's questions always did. Some people make judgments without knowing someone's story. Because we're black? Marcus stopped walking, knelt down on the sidewalk, not caring about the people who had to step around them. Maya's eyes held the particular hurt of someone learning the world was different than they'd hoped. Sometimes, yes, the world isn't always fair, baby girl. But that doesn't mean we stop being who we are. We stay kind. We stay dignified. We don't let anyone make us small. Like you didn't yell at Miss Hale? His daughter's memory was sharp as broken glass, exactly like that. That night, at 2:17 in the morning, Marcus woke to the sound he'd learned to recognize instantly, the high-pitched wheeze that meant Maya's lungs were betraying her again. He was in her room before his brain fully registered being awake, inhaler already in his hand. She sat up in bed, chest heaving, eyes wide with the particular terror of not being able to breathe. Marcus held her steady, counting her breaths, administering the medication in practiced motions that had become muscle memory over years of crisis management. Slow, baby, just like we practiced, in through the nose. 10 minutes stretched into 20. The attack was mild compared to others, but every second of watching his daughter struggle to do something as basic as breathe felt like drowning alongside her. Finally, her breathing steadied. She leaned against his chest, exhausted. Daddy, are we going to be okay? The question held the weight of everything she understood, and everything she didn't. Marcus pulled her closer. I promise you, baby, I'm going to make sure of it. He meant it, every word, even if he had no idea how to make good on that promise with $15 left in his account and no job on the horizon. Across the city, in a penthouse that cost more per month than most people made in a year, Victoria Hale stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time she'd slept through the night. Her bedroom was temperature-controlled, the mattress orthopedic, and recommended by 3 different specialists. The blackout curtains cost $800 and blocked every photon of light from the city below. None of it helped. Marcus Thompson's face kept appearing in her mind, along with his voice, quiet and certain, delivering words she couldn't shake. I feel sorry for you. At 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and moved to her home office. Poured scotch she didn't drink. Opened her laptop to quarterly reports that usually brought her comfort. Profit margins up 18% year over year. Stock price climbing steadily. Every metric screaming success. Her phone vibrated. Felix Okonkwo calling at 3 in the morning meant problems. Victoria. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone who'd practiced not showing emotion in rooms where emotion was weakness. Felix, it's late. The Thompson termination. He hasn't signed the severance agreement. Victoria's fingers tightened around her glass. So? He has 30 days. He also hasn't cleaned out his locker. And Victoria, there's something else. He accessed our building network 4 days ago from an external IP address. What was he looking at? Don't know yet. But Victoria... The pause stretched long enough to be worrying. He's the 73rd parent we've terminated in 6 years. If anyone starts connecting those cases, if any journalist or lawyer notices the pattern, there is no pattern, Felix. We terminate underperformers. Their personal situations are irrelevant to job performance. In this climate, with DEI scrutiny, social media, viral outrage, Felix's voice carried something she'd never heard from him before: uncertainty, maybe fear. Maybe we should review the policy, just to be safe. Victoria set down her glass with enough force to make it ring. Felix, I didn't build an $800 million company by being afraid of scrutiny. Marcus Thompson was a janitor. He has no resources, no leverage, no platform. Let it go. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. Understood. He hung up. Victoria returned to her reports, but the numbers had stopped making sense. She opened a new browser window, typed 3 words: Marcus Thompson, EEOC. Then she closed the browser without searching. Some things were better left unknown. 2 floors below, in his office at Hale Industries, Felix Okonkwo sat in the dark and thought about choices. He'd graduated from Howard Law 23 years ago, the only black associate hired that year at a white shoe Manhattan firm. The partners had taken him to lunch and explained the rules with the casual certainty of people who'd never questioned their right to make them. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. Protect the client at all costs. He'd followed those rules for 2 decades, made general counsel at 40, 6-figure salary, corner office, respect from people who mattered. But when Marcus Thompson had stood in that conference room, Felix had kept his eyes on his hands rather than meet the gaze of another black man being discarded by the same system that had elevated him. The shame of that moment sat in his chest like swallowed glass. His desk phone rang. Victoria again. I need you to draft something, just in case Thompson becomes a problem. Legal justification for the termination. Performance documentation. Anything that protects us if he decides to file a complaint. Felix's fingers moved to his keyboard automatically, muscle memory from 23 years of protecting clients from consequences. Of course, I'll have it by morning. Rosa Delgado's basement apartment in Washington Heights smelled like old paper and determination. Marcus descended the narrow stairs, following the woman who'd reached out when everyone else had looked away. She was 42, Latina, with eyes that had seen enough corporate cruelty to recognize it instantly. I've been at Hale Industries 12 years. Every termination crosses my desk for legal review before it goes to HR. She gestured at the boxes filling every available surface. 73 files, each one flagged with colored tabs. Red for single parents, blue for caregivers, green for pregnancy or maternity situations. I started keeping copies 3 years ago when I noticed the pattern. Same coded language in every case, same timeline, same outcome. Marcus opened the nearest file. Sarah Chen, terminated 2022. Lack of commitment to company culture, refused optional networking events, performance concerns. Attached to Chen's file was an internal memo dated 2 weeks before her termination. From Diane Morrison, HR Director, to Victoria Hale. Chen has declined evening events 3 times since returning from maternity leave. Recommend PIP to document performance issues before termination. PIP means Performance Improvement Plan. It's supposed to help struggling employees. Diane uses them as paper trails. No one survives a PIP at Hale Industries. They're designed to fail. Marcus pulled another file. James Rodriguez, 2021. Then Patricia Williams, 2020. Every file told the same story with different names. There's more. Rosa handed him a document that made his blood run cold. Internal memo from Diane Morrison to Victoria Hale, dated March 2018. Subject line, EEOC Audit Risk Assessment. Marcus read it twice, his legal training kicking in automatically, cataloging every violation, every admission, at every piece of evidence that could destroy the careful fiction Hale Industries had maintained. To minimize federal scrutiny, recommend terminating employees with culture fit concerns before formal complaints can be filed, using settlement agreements with NDAs for any filed complaints, ensuring no single protected class shows statistical disparity, spread terminations across races and genders, but maintain focus on uncommitted employees. The last line hit hardest. Legal confirms this strategy has 94% litigation avoidance rate. Felix Okonkwo wrote that confirmation. He designed the whole system. Marcus's hands were shaking. He set the memo down carefully, as if it might explode. How many people know about this? Me, you, and now 2 others who agreed to talk. The coffee shop on Amsterdam Avenue had been chosen for its corner booth and background noise. Sarah Chen arrived first, her hands wrapped around a cup she didn't drink from. Malik Johnson came 10 minutes later, a black father of twins who'd been terminated in 2020 for taking FMLA leave when his mother had a stroke. Marcus laid out the evidence, showed them the 73 cases, explained the systematic targeting, watched their faces move through disbelief to recognition to rage. Even if we file complaints, Malik's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd already lost once and knew the cost of losing again. Hale's lawyers will drag it out for years. I can't afford legal bills. I've got 2 kids in college, and I'm working 3 jobs just to keep up with what I lost. Marcus pulled out a legal pad covered in his own handwriting, case citations, federal statutes, a roadmap he'd been building for 4 weeks while surviving on peanut butter and rage. We're not filing individual complaints. We're filing a class action lawsuit under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. Sarah's eyes widened. That's federal civil rights statute. You'd need to prove systematic intentional discrimination. I have 73 cases showing disparate impact on parents of color. I have termination records with identical coded language. I have emails from Victoria Hale and Diane Morrison explicitly outlining a policy to target caregivers while avoiding statistical red flags. And I have Felix Okonkwo's legal memo confirming he knew this was discriminatory and helped design it anyway. The silence at the table held a different quality now. Rosa leaned forward. Who are you? Marcus had known this moment was coming, had practiced the words in his bathroom mirror while Maya slept. Before my wife died, I was deputy director of the EEOC's Civil Rights Division in Washington, D.C. I prosecuted employment discrimination cases for 12 years. I know exactly what evidence we need to win this case, and we have it. Rosa's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Why the hell were you working as a janitor? Because Linda's medical bills bankrupted us. To $340,000 in 18 months. I sold our house in Bethesda, moved to New York to be near her sister. I needed a job immediately that offered health insurance for Maya. Hale Industries hired me in 72 hours without running a background check beyond criminal records. I didn't lie about my past. I just didn't volunteer it. Malik stared at him like seeing a completely different person. So you've been undercover this whole time? No. I was trying to survive. But when Victoria fired me using language I'd seen in hundreds of discrimination cases, I recognized what I was looking at. And I couldn't walk away. The eviction notice was taped to Marcus's door when he arrived home 2 days later, Maya holding his hand as they climbed the stairs. 30 days to vacate or face legal action. But he pulled it down before she could read it, folding the paper into his pocket like it might disappear if she didn't see it. Inside, he checked his bank account on his phone. The severance payment he'd been counting on showed as returned. Insufficient funds. But that was impossible. He scrolled back through transactions. There, a withdrawal 3 days ago for $1,240, labeled Hale Industries Severance Reclamation. They'd clawed it back. The legal aid office in Brooklyn had a waiting room full of people who'd run out of other options. Marcus sat with his termination paperwork, eviction notice, and bank statements spread across his lap. Jennifer Park, the attorney who finally called his name, looked younger than her credentials suggested. They're claiming you violated the severance agreement by accessing company computer systems after termination. They're threatening to sue you for theft of proprietary information. Marcus kept his voice level through sheer force of will. I didn't access company systems. I used my own EEOC database credentials to search public court records. Can you prove that? Yes, but it'll take time, and I'm about to be evicted. Jennifer's face showed the practiced sympathy of someone who delivered bad news daily. There's more. Hale Industries sent letters to 14 major janitorial companies in the tri-state area. They've flagged you as a litigation risk. You're being blacklisted, Marcus. The words landed like physical blows. They weren't just fighting back. They were trying to erase him. They want you to disappear, to take the severance, sign the NDA, and go away. They have unlimited legal resources. Even if you're right, this could take years and bankrupt you before you ever see a courtroom. Marcus thought about Maya's asthma medication running out in 3 days. Thought about the eviction notice in his pocket. Thought about 72 other families who'd been broken by the same machine that was now grinding him down. My dignity is not for sale. Neither is justice for 72 other families. That same night at 11 p.m., Victoria Hale sat alone in her office and did what she'd avoided doing for 2 weeks. She typed Marcus Thompson's name into Google. The results loaded slowly, as if the internet itself was reluctant to deliver this particular truth. Marcus Thompson, Juris Doctor, Howard University School of Law. Former Deputy Director, EEOC Civil Rights Division, 2008 to 2020. Prosecuted 47 employment discrimination cases with an 89% conviction rate. Resigned to care for terminally ill spouse. Victoria's hand moved to close the browser, but she couldn't look away. There were photos. Marcus in a suit that actually fit, standing beside other officials at press conferences. Marcus receiving an award from the Department of Justice. Marcus testifying before Congress about systemic workplace discrimination. She'd fired a federal civil rights prosecutor and then tried to bury him. Her phone rang. Felix. Legal team is ready. We'll file motions to dismiss, bury him in discovery requests, drag this out until he runs out of money and options. Victoria's voice came out smaller than she intended. Do it. She hung up and stared at her own reflection in the darkened window. For the first time in 15 years, she looked at herself and didn't recognize the person staring back. Rosa's apartment had become a war room. Papers covered every surface. Marcus, Rosa, Sarah, and Malik worked through the night, building a case that would either change everything or destroy them all. Rosa pulled a document from the bottom of a box and went completely still. Oh my God! 3 heads turned toward her. I found something. Board meeting minutes from 2019. She read aloud, her voice shaking slightly. CFO reports turnover costs reduce it at 23% through strategic terminations of low ROI employees. Board discusses targeting extended leave, reduced hours, and caregiving obligations. Board votes to approve continuation of policy. 8 votes in favor. Victoria Hale abstains. Marcus took the document, reading it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. The board knew. They voted on it. This isn't just Victoria and Felix and Diane. This is institutional policy approved at the highest level. Malik leaned back, running his hands over his face. This is bigger than wrongful termination. This is conspiracy. This is Department of Justice territory. Everyone looked at Marcus. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts he hadn't used in 3 years, and found the name he needed. Patricia Reeves, Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division. They'd worked together for 6 years, tried 12 cases side by side, built the kind of professional trust that survived career changes in time. He typed a text message. Patricia, it's Marcus Thompson. I need your help. Federal civil rights case. Systematic discrimination. Evidence of institutional conspiracy. Can you call me? The response came in 4 minutes. Marcus Thompson rises from the dead. Call you in 10. When his phone rang, Marcus stepped into Rosa's bathroom for privacy. The conversation lasted 37 minutes. When he emerged, his face held something new. Something that looked like hope, tempered by absolute certainty. DOJ is opening a preliminary investigation. Patricia wants to see everything we have. If we can get Victoria on record either lying under oath or admitting to the policy, they'll launch a full probe. Subpoenas, depositions, potential criminal charges for Felix and Diane. The room absorbed this information in silence. How do we get Victoria on record? Marcus smiled without humor. We ask her very politely to attend a board meeting where she thinks she's in control, and we make sure the DOJ is there to hear what she says. The night before the confrontation, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with his briefcase open. Inside, 73 files printed and organized, USB drives with digital evidence, legal citations highlighted and tabbed, the 2018 memo that proved intent, the 2019 board minutes that proved conspiracy, federal statutes that would send Felix Okonkwo's legal career into freefall. Maya appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Daddy, are you nervous? Marcus looked at his daughter and saw everything that mattered. Yeah, baby, I am. About tomorrow? She'd overheard enough phone calls to piece together the outline of what was coming. How do you know about tomorrow? I heard you talking to Miss Rosa. You're going to see Miss Hale again. He gestured for her to sit beside him. She climbed into the chair, feet dangling above the floor. I'm going to tell her, and a lot of other people, that what she did was wrong. Not just to me, but to a lot of families. Will she say sorry? I don't know. Some people don't know how to say sorry. Are you going to yell at her? No. Why not? She was mean. Marcus took his daughter's hand, feeling her pulse against his fingers, steady and alive and trusting. Because yelling doesn't change people. The truth does. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell the truth. What if she doesn't listen? Then other people will. And that's enough. Maya hugged him tight, then padded back to her room. Marcus sat alone with his evidence and his certainty and the weight of 73 families counting on him to be exactly what he'd always been, calm, prepared, and unwilling to let injustice win through exhaustion. His phone buzzed. Text from Patricia Reeves. DOJ team will be present tomorrow per your intel. Recording devices authorized. Make sure Hale doesn't know we're there until you're ready. Good luck, Marcus. You're doing the right thing. He texted back, see you at 9 a.m. Marcus stood, put on the suit he'd bought from a thrift store for $12, and looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back was tired, broke, and running on nothing but conviction. But he was also exactly who he needed to be. Tomorrow, everything would change. The question was whether the change would break him or the system that had tried to make him disappear. The boardroom held its breath. Marcus pulled folders from his briefcase with deliberate slowness, distributing copies to each board member. Victoria's hand remained frozen above her tablet, not quite touching the surface. Over 6 years, Hale Industries terminated 73 employees. 68% were parents. 89% were people of color. Every single one received identical performance documentation written by your HR director, Diane Morrison, using the exact same coded language. He opened his own copy, reading aloud. Lack of commitment, not a team player, declined optional opportunities, performance concerns. These phrases appear in every termination file. I'll be always written 2 to 3 weeks before the actual firing. The performance improvement plans Ms. Morrison created weren't designed to improve performance. They were designed to create legal cover. A board member near the end of the table, gray-haired and wearing a suit that cost more than Marcus's car, cleared his throat. That's concerning, but surely isolated incidents of poor judgment don't constitute... It's not isolated. Marcus pulled out the document Rosa had found, the one that changed everything from mistake to conspiracy. This is an internal memo from March 2018, from Diane Morrison to Miss Hale. Subject line, EEOC Audit Risk Assessment. I'll read the relevant section. His voice stayed level, professional. I'm the tone of someone who delivered evidence in federal courtrooms and knew exactly how much power lived in staying calm. To minimize federal scrutiny, recommend terminating employees with culture fit concerns before formal complaints filed, using settlement agreements with NDAs. Ensuring no single protected class shows statistical disparity. Spread terminations across races and genders while maintaining focus on uncommitted employees. He set the memo down. Uncommitted employees. That's code for parents and caregivers. And at the bottom of this memo is a confirmation from Felix Okonkwo, your general counsel, stating that this strategy has a 94% litigation avoidance rate. Felix stood abruptly, his chair scraping against expensive flooring. This meeting is over. Security needs to... Sit down, Mr. Okonkwo. Marcus's voice carried steel wrapped in silk. I'm not finished. And if you call security, the 3 people in the back of this room will identify themselves as Department of Justice officials authorized to record these proceedings. Every head turned. 3 people in business attire near the door stood, badges already visible. Patricia Reeves stepped forward. Assistant Attorney General Patricia Reeves, Civil Rights Division. This meeting is being recorded under federal investigation authority. Everyone in this room is advised that lying to federal investigators carries criminal penalties. The oxygen seemed to leave the space. Victoria's face had gone the color of old paper. Marcus pulled out another document. This is from Hale Industries Board Meeting Minutes, October 2019. I'll read the relevant section. CFO reports turnover costs reduced 23% through strategic terminations of low ROI employees. Board discusses targeting extended leave, reduced hours, caregiving obligations. Motion to approve continuation of policy. 8 votes in favor, 1 abstention. He looked directly at Victoria. You abstained. You didn't vote to approve it, but you didn't stop it either. You let your board vote to systematically discriminate against working parents, and then you implemented that policy for 2 more years. Who are you? Victoria's voice came out raw, stripped of its usual certainty. Marcus straightened, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 12 years prosecuting cases exactly like this one. My name is Marcus Thompson, Juris Doctor from Howard University School of Law. I served as Deputy Director of the EEOC's Civil Rights Division from 2008 to 2020. I prosecuted 47 employment discrimination cases with an 89% conviction rate. I resigned to care for my wife, Linda. who died of cancer in 2021. Her medical bills cost us everything. The room absorbed this information in stunned silence. I took a janitorial position here because I needed immediate health insurance for my daughter. You hired me without checking my background beyond criminal records. You saw a black man who needed work and assumed you knew my entire story. You were wrong. Victoria's hands were shaking now. Why didn't you just walk away? You got your severance. You could have. You clawed back my severance and tried to blacklist me from every janitorial company in New York. You tried to make me disappear. But that's not why I'm here. Marcus gestured at the folders spread across the table. I'm here because 72 other families couldn't walk away. Because my 8-year-old daughter had to ask me if she was the reason I lost my job. Because I stood in a convenience store while a cashier treated me like garbage, and my child had to ask if it was because we're black. His voice never rose, never wavered. You built a system that punishes people for being human, for having families, for choosing presence over profit. And you did it knowing exactly what you were doing, with legal advice from your general counsel, approved by your board, implemented over 6 years. That's not poor judgment. That's institutional discrimination. That's a federal civil rights violation. That's why the Department of Justice is here. Patricia Reeves moved to the table's head. Miss Hale, Mr. Okonkwo, Mrs. Morrison, you're under formal investigation for systematic civil rights violations, conspiracy to deprive rights under color of law, and retaliation. We'll be issuing subpoenas for all employment records, internal communications, and financial documents related to these 73 terminations. The board chair, a woman Marcus recognized from Forbes covers, stood. Miss Hale, as of this moment, you're suspended pending investigation. Felix Okonkwo, you're suspended effective immediately, and we're referring you to the New York State Bar Association. Diane Morrison, you're terminated. This meeting is adjourned. Victoria walked out alone. No briefcase, no phone. Just her expensive suit and the sudden understanding that everything she'd built could collapse because she'd mistaken ruthlessness for strength. The news broke within hours. CNN ran it as breaking news. Billionaire CEO suspended after DOJ civil rights probe. The New York Times published a deep investigation that night. Systematic discrimination at Hale Industries. 73 families, 6 years, one pattern. Social media exploded. Sarah Chen tweeted from her account, I was one of the 73. Marcus Thompson gave me back my voice. #Hale accountability. It went viral in 4 hours. The settlement took 6 months to negotiate. Marcus stood in a federal courtroom as Judge Andrea Sotomayor read the terms aloud to a gallery packed with journalists and former employees. Hale Industries will pay $18.4 million in compensatory damages distributed among 73 plaintiffs. An additional $5 million will fund the Thompson Foundation for Working Families. The company will implement mandatory bias training, third-party auditing of all terminations, and a formal caregiver accommodation policy. The gallery erupted in applause. Marcus didn't smile. This was justice, not victory. Justice meant acknowledging harm done. Victory would mean the harm never happened. California passed the Marcus Thompson Act 4 months later, requiring employers to prove legitimate non-discriminatory reasons for terminating parents within 1 year of any family event. 6 other states followed within 18 months. The EEOC published new federal guidelines citing Thompson versus Hale Industries as precedent for caregiver discrimination claims. Sarah Chen used her settlement to open a workplace equity consulting firm. Malik Johnson attended his son's college graduation with tears streaming down his face. Rosa Delgado was promoted to general counsel under Hale Industries' new CEO, a black woman named Diana Washington who implemented a family-first policy on her first day. Marcus rented a small office in Brooklyn and hung a sign, Thompson Foundation for Working Families. The applications started arriving immediately. Single parents needing legal representation, families facing discrimination, people who'd been told their worth could be measured in hours logged rather than lives lived. 2 years later, the beach in the Rockaway stretched wide and mostly empty on a Tuesday afternoon in June. Maya, now 10 years old and 3 inches taller, ran along the shoreline with a kite that lifted and dipped in the salt wind. Marcus sat on a blanket, watching her, letting himself exist in this moment without calculating what it cost or whether he could afford it. She sprinted back, breathless and grinning with the particular joy of someone who just accomplished something difficult. Did you see? It stayed up for like 5 whole minutes. I saw. You're getting really good at this. Maya collapsed beside him, sand sticking to her legs. Remember when we couldn't go anywhere? The question arrived without judgment, just curiosity about a past that felt distant now. Yeah, baby, I remember. Do you miss your old job, the important one, before Hale Industries? Marcus thought about the answer. About the years in Washington, D.C., prosecuting cases in federal courtrooms. About the prestige and the salary and the career trajectory that had felt inevitable until cancer and medical bills had rewritten everything. Sometimes, but you know what I don't miss? Missing you. Miss Chen from school showed us an article about you. She said you're famous. I'm not famous. I just did what was right. She said you helped a lot of families. A lot of families helped each other. I just started the conversation. Maya leaned against him, and they watched waves roll in with the timeless rhythm of water meeting shore. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Email notification. He almost didn't check it, but something made him pull it out. The sender was victoria.hale@gmail.com. Subject line, "Thank you." Marcus opened it against his better judgment. Mr. Thompson, I know I have no right to contact you, but I needed you to know. I've spent 2 years in therapy, working with former employees I harmed, learning what I should have known all along. You were right. I was lonely. I built walls instead of bridges. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to say thank you for holding up a mirror. You changed my life. And you changed 73 families' lives. That matters more than anything I ever built. Marcus read it twice, felt the weight of her words and the years of pain that preceded them. Then he deleted the email without responding. Some apologies didn't require acceptance. Some transformations had to happen without validation from the people who'd been hurt. Maya tugged at his sleeve. Daddy? Yeah, baby girl. When I grow up, I want to help people like you do. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of sunscreen and salt water and the simple miracle of his daughter alive and thriving. You already do. Every single day. The kite pulled against its string, fighting to fly higher. Maya jumped up to chase it, running along the beach with abandon that only came from knowing someone was watching to make sure she stayed safe. Marcus pulled out his phone again and typed a text to Patricia Reeves. How many families did